Do you feel like your progress is stalling with your workouts? Maybe your strength isn't improving, or you're feeling like you're not getting any more fit despite trying to exercise on a consistent basis. There's one giant reason why this may be happening, and that's exactly what we want to talk to you about on this week's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast. We're going to cue our introduction, and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast, brought to you by Exercise for Life Studios, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset. And the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie.
And today we are discussing this idea of progressing with your workouts and what may actually be keeping you from progressing with your workouts. See, there's one giant thing that's super popular in the mainstream fitness industry that could be killing the results that you're trying to get from your workouts. And so we want to help you identify that today, explain why it's killing your results and what to do about it.
So today we're really going to talk about if you have a workout plan. Because here's the thing, a lot of people don't, because kind of in the fitness world, we're fed this idea of like, just do it. Like, just anything is better than nothing and just do it. And while I'd rather you be exercising and doing anything rather than not exercising at all, there are a lot of you out there that are exercising and doing that anything and doing whatever is convenient or whatever, you think of that day. And you're feeling disappointed with where your body is going. And whenever we talk to people like that, the first thing we ask is like, so what are you doing? And the response is always like, I eat healthy and I work out, I walk, I run, I do some stuff. And there's really just a lot of randomness. And this randomness can really be the cause of a lot of people stalling. And it's definitely the cause of not being able to figure out why you're stalling.
Yep.
And so we needed to break this down today because we want you to feel successful in the gym, but that does take knowing what you're actually doing with your exercise and what's helping you and what is hindering you.
Exactly. And a lot of times this also looks like, hey, I use my workout app and I just pick a class, whatever class that I just want to do, whether it's a cycle class or a HIIT class or a boot camp class or whatever. I'm just going to choose kind of the flavor of the day and just roll with that class. And yes, I can check my exercise off my list. I can, check it off my build bucket and everything like that. That's great. That's awesome. But if you're finding that, well, I don't really notice that I'm actually getting more fit. I've been doing this for a year and a half, 2 years or more, and I'm just kind of staying at the same level. I don't really feel myself progressing all that much. There's a big reason why that's happening. And like you're saying, Julie, a lot of it comes down to the idea that you're not actually programming your workouts, or you don't have a workout plan. Now, this idea of like programming your workouts, it can feel very like uninviting, right? Like, oh, what do I mean? You need to know like exactly what exercise I'm going to do for like the next 4 to 8 weeks. And that's not what we're talking about. You don't have to do that at all. But there are some big issues with just kind of taking this random approach of like, okay, well, some days I'll walk and, then I'll go do a class on the app, or, then I'll join in on a group fitness class or whatever, and not actually having a plan by which that, okay, this workout that I'm doing today is progressing me from where I was the last time I worked out, and it's setting me up to come back and do another workout that's going to progress me from where I am today. All right. And the people that continuously are able to build their strength, build their fitness, build their health year after year, decade after decade, they implement a plan like this. And so we want to help you do that during today's episode.
That's right. So why is this important? Well, I was just thinking of this analogy of, I remember I started taking Spanish class in middle school. In middle school. Anyways, by the way, I loved Spanish. Like, I took it all the way through college. I almost did a minor in Spanish. I loved it. But I remember on the first day of Spanish class, I was like, this is so overwhelming, and I still only know like hola. Like, that's it. Like, that's all the Spanish that I know. I remember drilling my sister because she did like 2 years of middle school Spanish, so she was an expert, and I was like, how are we going to do this conjugation thing and whatever? But over time, I got really good at Spanish, and I took so many Spanish classes. I took it every year of college. We did Spanish every day. The only thing I didn't do was go live in a Spanish speaking country where I maybe could have gotten fluent. But the only reason that I was able to go from knowing just hola, that's it, to being decently fluent was that I had a lot of exposure to it. And I had a lot of exposure to it even when I didn't really know what was going on. But I just kept exposing myself to it. And that is how my Spanish speaking, writing, understanding ability was able to grow. And luckily with school, there's a strategy, right? There's a plan. You will do Spanish class twice a week. You will do Spanish class 5 days a week. And whatever. But the repeated exposure is how my brain was able to absorb this language that was not my primary language. Same thing happens when you're trying to change your muscles. If you do one thing once, you're probably not going to see much results. You'll see the immediate stuff like blood glucose levels changing and your mood changing, and you probably feel better immediately. But if you're looking for the long-term health-changing things that can happen when you resistance train, there has to be repeated exposure. I do not ever recommend someone go to one Spanish class and then think that they're going to jive in the Spanish country being fluent. No, you would have to take it for years and years and years and years to really attain the language. So to really get the benefits that exercise can provide to your body and specifically your muscles, you have to have that repeated exposure. What we find a lot of times is when people are doing random workouts and there's no plan, and we can talk about plans in after we kind of review some of these, but when you don't have a plan, simple or complex, the repeated exposure is often not there because randomness usually means I just want to do what's the most exciting right now. And that means probably doing something very different than what I did previously.
Right. And this really is the first big issue that we see when people take this approach of just doing random workouts, doing, a little bit of cycling and a little bit of HIIT and a little bit of boot camp and, just kind of sprinkling in whatever they're feeling like doing that day, is because it lacks the repeated exposure that really is necessary in order to get your body to change for the long term. In other words, to get sustainable results, then you're going to see an increase in your strength, in your fitness, in your function overall for a short window of time at the beginning. But you're not going to be able to sustain that progress, and you're not going to be able to sustain those results because you don't have a plan in place, because you are not, like Julie was saying, repeatedly exposing your body to that stimulus, whether it is, repeatedly in the cycle class or repeatedly doing strength training. Okay, so if you're feeling I'm just not making the progress, that's the first thing to check is okay, well, if I'm doing random stuff, maybe I'm not getting enough exposure to the things that my body needs in order to actually make the lasting changes that I want to make. The second really big thing is that when you change the stimulus, meaning when you change the exercises and everything like that on a consistent basis, your body first needs to learn the new skills that you are introducing to it before it will start to feel comfortable of really starting to challenge itself. Okay. And we see this all the time where if you have somebody who say is, doing a split squat. All right. And, 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, and they're dropping up and down. Okay, cool. And then we're like, okay, cool. Now the next workout, we're going to go to, a walking lunge, which looks kind of like a similar motion, but you are now moving with it 1 foot, then the next, kind of walking some distance while you're doing a lunge or split squat. Guess what? They're not going to be able to challenge their muscles as much when they're doing the walking version until they acquire the skill of being able to walk with the lunge. And then once they acquire the skill, which may take, it may take a set, 2 sets, it may take a week or more. And now all of a sudden, then they can go back and actually start challenging themselves. But in the interim, when they're acquiring the skill, they are losing the effect that the strength training can provide from a strength, from a fitness, from an overall function perspective, because they are now trading off their strength training for skill acquisition. Okay. So that's the next thing, the kind of the next big warning sign of, randomly changing your workouts all the time, or haphazardly changing your workouts, doing random workouts all the time, is that you are requiring your body to constantly have to try to learn new skills. And because you never move past that skill acquisition phase, or that, like, I feel I have ownership over this skill phase, you never actually get to the point where you can really challenge your muscles to the extent where you will see increases in strength, where you'll see increases in fitness, and those increases will last longer term.
I think people really love skill acquisition. Like, we don't think of it this way, but everyone that says, like, oh, well, I just have to have a new workout, keep it interesting. That means that you want to master a skill, meaning there's a short period of time. That could be, one workout to learn a skill, or in some people it takes a little bit longer. Like, I had a client that took almost a year to, like, really master the skill of weight training. And, but then they want to switch to something new. And that's fine to have variation in what you're doing, but what you want to avoid is feeling like, okay, we'll keep it really simple. I've mastered the split squat. Now I've mastered that. The next step is to start challenging it regularly. Have that repeated exposure, like step number 1. But instead, we're like, oh, well, I've mastered the split squat, so let me just progress to the lunge. And then we master that skill, and then we go to the next. So again, you can have variety, but don't compromise variety and funness and spiciness and what's interesting for actually then going and challenging the muscles and actually getting that stimulus to the muscles. Because you can't really stimulate your muscles to a large amount, or the way that most people hope to for their health, if you're struggling to learn the skill. So it is a step in the process, like learn how to do a pull down correctly, learn how to do a press correctly. But you do have to then take it to the next step of, like, hey, that skill is not difficult for me. Now I can load it. Now I can get that muscle contraction that I need for my health. So making sure, like, you have the variety, but you're not compromising. I just want all new stuff. That then becomes skill acquisition because it's fun and interesting and you like doing new stuff, for then you're losing out on the really challenging your body and really challenging your muscles contraction, because that's really where all the health benefits come from, is when you are really adding that intensity to the muscle challenge, which means you have to have mastered the skill.
Exactly. And then going into the third big reason why doing random workouts is stalling your results and stalling your progress, is you really don't know what's working and what's not working. If you are changing the variables and changing the inputs all the time, it's really hard to pinpoint and say, okay, yeah, the things that I did during that workout, those are moving the needle in the right direction. It's very easy to say, oh, the things I did during the workout, those are making me worse, because you'll leave achy, beat up, sore, just feeling lousy overall. But if you're not feeling those things, it's hard to say, okay, well, then those things are definitely kind of progressing me down the direction that I want to go, because you're changing them all the time. And the issue with that is without knowing what is really working well and what's not working well, you don't know what to emphasize more during your workouts. You don't know that, hey, like when I, consistently do cardio, like consistently do the cycle classes, the spin classes, I actually notice that, the strength in my legs goes up. Like that's pretty solid. And, my joints don't feel lousy after. And, I feel like my legs feel more firm and toned, for example. You won't be able to pick up on that, because if you're doing cycle and then HIIT and then boot camp and then, bar class or whatever, it's kind of, you don't know which one is kind of driving the results that you're trying to get, because you're sprinkling so much in there. And so that's why we really recommend, hey, like, have a plan. It doesn't mean that you only need to do cycle classes. We're going to talk about the plan here coming up. But you do need to have some kind of plan that will allow you to understand, like, what's working for your body and what's not working.
Right. So this kind of can serve you in a couple ways, right? So if you're like, dang, I'm not getting as strong as I want, or I'm not, feeling as functional and flexible as I want. And then you're like, okay, well, what am I doing? And you're like, well, this week I walked 3 times a week, and last week I walked 1 time a week, and I did Pilates twice this week, but once last week, and I did, my strength training, like, not at all, and then 3 times this week. So it's really random, right? Instead of saying, like, I walk 3 times, I strengthen twice, and I do 1 Pilates, or whatever your plan is. At least you can say, here are my 5, however many things I listed out. Here's my chunk of workouts that I do regularly. Is it working or is it not? And then you know the variables you can play with. But if you have no set of like, I don't know, I just do random stuff when I feel like it, when I have time, then it's really hard to, number one, figure out what's going wrong. And number two, if you do actually add a plan to that, you'll probably get better because you'll be like, okay, well now I kind of have a goal, right? I need to get my strengthening in 4 days a week. I need to get my cardio in twice a week. And then just adding that consistency is really helpful. But if you don't know what you're working with, then it's hard to change the variables.
Yeah, exactly. So like how often should you be changing up your workouts and everything like that? Well, it really depends on where you are in your workout journey and where you are in your exercise journey, okay? It's often said that kind of when somebody who is new to exercise starts doing, strength training or resistance training on a regular basis, like the first 6 weeks, the changes that they notice are mostly from like more or less an increase in coordination, all right? Being able to access their muscles better. They say, okay, well, the strength gains are in the first 6 weeks. They say, oh, they're all neurological, okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean that the muscles and the tissues themselves are getting stronger, but they are seeing, increases in output and everything like that. So that comes into play. The way that I like to think about it is think about your workouts. I would plan on looking at your workouts in kind of like 12-week or 3-month segments, okay? And the reason being is you might be thinking like, oh my gosh, like 12 weeks, like I need to keep doing the same thing like over and over for 12 weeks. Well, here's the thing, okay? It's going to get you past that 6-week window, number one. Number two, if you're exercising for the rest of your life, then the next 12 weeks, like that's just part of the process, right? So unless you're thinking, well, I was really planning on stopping after 8 weeks, it's like, yeah, okay, no, we're talking about you need a long-term plan for the rest of forever. So think about your workouts kind of in 12-week segments. Now you can change what you're doing within like the 12 weeks, but you want to be thinking, okay, for like the first, for those 12 weeks, you are resistance trainer doing strength training like the same number of times every week. You don't want to do like 4 times a week for the first 4 weeks and then twice a week for the second 4 weeks and then just every once in a while during the third 4 weeks. It's like, okay, no, for the next 12 weeks I'm going to do resistance training 4 times a week. And I'm going to do, a cycle class, twice a week. And then I'm going to go for a walk once a week. Like that would be planned. And then as you go through, then you can change the exercises, what you're doing and stuff throughout that time. But think of it like in a 12-week plan. Think of, all right, these are the things that I'm going to be doing, over the next 12 weeks. This is the consistency that I'm going to have. And that will get you past the kind of skill acquisition and learning phase and into the phase where it's like, all right, I've had a solid 6 weeks now to see if this is changing my body in the right direction. And if it's not, then you can start tweaking things from there.
Charlie, I like that piece of advice because it gives your body time to change. Like, I think if I said this, you would all agree. Like, go to the gym and do a set of bicep curls. That's not going to change your biceps. Everyone's like, yeah, of course, you have to do it over and over and over again. But when we say, oh, go to the gym and do a new workout every time, just do something brand new, try something new, make it really fun, change it up, then people are like, yeah, I agree with that. But the two can't coexist. You have to be repeatedly exposing your body to the stimulus that you want it to be exposed to, right? Or else your body's not going to change. One set or 1 week of an exercise routine is not going to change your body in any significant way. You have to repeat it, and you have to repeat it long enough that number one, you get the skills down, and number two, you have repeated stimulus so that your body gets to change in that direction. Now, I do want to address one thing, because you might be listening to this and be like, well, Julie and Charlie, I thought we always had to be like changing the stimulus like a little bit. And if you are doing what we call body matching, meaning you're listening to your body and you're responding. So a lot of times in the fitness world, we're like, you should listen to your body. But Charlie and I think that you should listen to your body and then adjust what you do because of what you've heard from your body, right? Not a lot of things happen like that. Every single time you do any exercise, you are body matching, meaning you're listening and adjusting. You're listening and adjusting. It doesn't mean you're listening and omitting. You're listening and adjusting. Most people just omit, like, oh, my knees feel weird, I won't squat today. You should squat, But when you're doing that listen and adjustment like cycle, every exercise will be a little different.
Yeah.
Meaning, number one, your skill is different because you're just getting better at like, hey, I think I've mastered this whole bicep thing. And number two, depending on what's going on in your body changes. Number one, if it's getting easier, that means you're getting stronger. You need a heavier weight. Or if there's some kind of joint thing, which by the way, most people have joint things going on at all times, right? We all have like a body that's constantly trying to do its best, which means it's not perfect. And so you're going to feel stuff when you exercise. And so that means that your chest press today is going to look different than the chest press you do next week. Number one, because your skill's different. Number two, you might be stronger or you might be weaker that day, depending on how your body entered the workout. And number three, you might have some joint stuff going on. And that makes every single exercise a little bit of a different stimulus. And that also, like that body matching is also a skill, which probably should be its own podcast. But anyways, you will always have a different stimulus, even if on paper you're doing like the same thing, because you are going to constantly be body matching, listening to your body and adjusting. And really that listen and adjust is the big principle that we try to teach like in our live trainings, because it is very difficult and it goes against a lot of what the gym world is telling you. It's actually not that difficult, but it's different because you have to change your brain about what you're thinking about your exercise. So make sure that you have that long-term exposure to your exercise so that you really can have the opportunity to adapt and you really can have the opportunity to get past just the skill acquisition part, and you'll have something to track and be like, hey, I didn't get as strong as I wanted. And my body's not breaking down. So it might be, hey, I weight trained twice a week this past month or this past 12 weeks. And now I'm ready to progress to 3 times a week or 4 times a week or whatever the adjustment is going to be.
Yeah, it's a huge piece. And if you're feeling like, well, how do I know how to go about adjusting my workouts? Like, okay, I can understand like, sectioning my work off in 12-week chunks. I can understand just like generally over the course of my week, 4 strength training bouts, a couple cardios and a walk. Like I can understand that, but how do I understand like the nuances to make sure that my workouts feel good and I can have that change while still coming back to the same thing? That's exactly what we're going to teach you how to do during our upcoming One Workout Away challenge. Okay. And so if you're part of the Exercise for Life membership, you're a premium member, you will be getting access to this One Workout Away challenge for free. It's already included. If you'd like to join us for the One Workout Away challenge, independent of the Exercise for Life membership, you can just go to www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/OWA. Okay. That link will be in the show notes below this video and below this podcast, depending if you're watching on YouTube or listening. But at the end of the day, we're going to go through those nuances that you need to know so you can understand the changes to make so you can get the results that you're wanting while being like specific and strategizing your workouts, and know that you have a plan that you can keep following long term to keep progressing your body. All right. And so that's what we're going to be teaching you. It does kick off on Sunday, April 30th. So the registration closes on Saturday, April 29th at 11:59 p.m. So again, that's www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/OWA is where you can get in for the One Workout Away challenge. We're going to teach you all the nitty-gritty details that you need to know in order to be able to consistently progress your health, progress your strength, progress your function by making sure that you are strategizing your workouts.
I have a spoiler alert. So one thing I'm really excited about is that, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you are a member, you know this. Every month we give our members something called the Exercise for Life track. And that is like a checklist of the workouts that you're going to do that month, because we want to help our members program their exercises. But the thing that we're actually pairing with the Strategize to Maximize program this month for month of May is going to be our brand new class called Strong and Balanced. So I am so pumped for our members to do that one because it's been highly requested and everyone trains balance in a very interesting, odd way. But anyways, if you jump in on that, you guys can enjoy the Exercise for Life track and get in that balanced workout. But I'm just like really pumped about it, so I had to put it in there.
Nice, right on. So yeah, again, The address is www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/OWA. That's where you can get in with the one workout away challenge that will be kicking off on Sunday, April 30th. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that is feeling like their workout progress is stalling? They are not getting stronger. They're not getting more fit. They don't feel like their health and function are improving despite exercising on a consistent basis. Share this episode with them so they can understand why they may be changing their workouts too frequently and how the random approach to their workout choices may actually be the thing that is stalling their progress. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week. We'll talk with you all next week. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Cates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.